I'm Jim Collison, and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska, this is Gallup's Call to Coach with special guest Jayne Jenkins, recorded on December 6th, 2013. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactic insights and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals and teams and organizations around the world. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the show, we do have a live chat room available right below the main video window, or if you're listening to the recorded version of this, email those to us right after the show at coaching@gallup.com. And don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video and both now live streaming and downloadable audio for your offline listening to past shows over at coaching.gallup.com. Jeremy Petrosini is our host today. Jeremy works as a learning and development consultant here at Gallup with me on the riverfront. And Jeremy, it's great to see you. I haven't seen you in a couple weeks. Good to see you, and welcome to Call to Coach.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I've been on the road a lot, but it's been fun. Again, with a lot of these coaching trainings we're doing around the country and really now around the world. Just finished our first in Singapore. It's been a lot of fun. So, but yeah, if you're new to these calls, we've been doing these for about the last 6 months. But we are excited to, again, just equip each of you out there in your roles as a coach. We know there's some of you that work within large organizations, some within education, nonprofit, and a lot of you really independent as coaches, consultants, and as Gallup's kind of begun to really change our model over the last 12 months to equip you all to partner with us in our vision to reach 1 billion people. Right now we're, again, kind of quickly approaching that 10 million. Just about 9.6 is where we're at today, just under that. Probably be there before the end of the day, but our goal again is to get 1 million individual coaches that would help us reach those 1 billion people. So Jayne Jenkins, who is our guest today, if you were on the pre-call, she's in warm, sunny, 81-degree Tampa, Florida, where Jim and I are here in Omaha at 0. But I did think, I saw on there, Jim, that Andy from South Dakota said it's -20, so zero's okay.
Ouch.
But Jayne is calling in from Tampa, and she is the CEO and founder of an organization called Churchill Leadership Group, which she started 2 years ago. Like many of you, she has worked within organizations, but she actually had the opportunity to spend over 23 years in sales, strategy, org development for actually several of the world's largest kind of Fortune 500 companies. So after doing that, took that risk to venture out on her own as an independent coach, consultant to executives, leaders, and their teams. And so, Jayne, we are just so excited to have you with us today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Tell us a little bit about your journey, because I know in training coaches, conversations, even a lot of the chat that we've had on these calls, we've got a lot of people like yourself that maybe started in an organization and have now started their own organization, or that's a dream of theirs to kind of start on their own independently. So tell us a little bit about your journey towards Strength Finder, and even how you got to taking that risk that you took 2 years ago.
Thank you. So I think you've already touched on a little piece of the background. So I grew up in the corporate world for 20 plus years, and I had the advantage of going across roles in the corporate world: sales leadership, marketing leadership, operations analytics. Most of those roles had me in a leadership position where I was either developing people or later on in a more senior role developing leaders. So the philosophy of the company that I was in is that personal development was so key every month of every year. It was a really high priority, and part of that was great leaders, great managers also had to be great coaches. So, you know, it's a little different, but I've been coaching people and had a coach consistently for all of those years. And so I learned the value of being very coachable, but also different ways to coach and the individualization that it takes, but also the result, the value to people when coaching was, we took it that important. We invested the time in it, we took it seriously, and we just looked to get better at what we did. So coaching came sort of part of what I did every day. About 12 years ago, one of the managers that was on my team, his name was Keith, introduced me to the whole concept of strengths and Strength Finder. I was brand new to it, and at that time we're always looking for new ways to develop our teams, and I was pleasantly shocked at the positive impact it had when I did it with myself and particularly with my team, in terms of what I call it was sticky. It's beyond the meeting that we had where I facilitated a strengths workshop. It lasted. People were talking about their strengths and how to use them and how to rely on each other for months and years afterwards. So that was the first thing I had seen in the corporate world that had that much impact long term. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, because I know you, like many others, have had a lot of exposure to other tools.
Yes.
But StrengthsFinder, from our interaction, Jayne, I know it became one for you that you just saw was really transformational. And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that. Like, I know different coaches have different tips or tricks for when somebody's taking StrengthsFinder, when you're having those conversations. Share with the coaches out there, what are some of the things that you find yourself doing around the StrengthsFinder instrument? What are some things that you do to really help kind of bring that enlightenment or aha or transformation to the leaders you work with?
That's a great question. So most of our clients are corporate leaders.
Okay.
So just to give that background, and one of the biggest things that we typically start with, myself and the other coaches, is focusing the client on the goal so that we can focus on the end result. And whilst that may seem pretty obvious, even we're amazed sometimes that when people come to the table, they can't quite articulate their goal in a way that's pretty succinct and measurable. So That's where we always start. The next step is where you can really bring in StrengthsFinder, because then it becomes about what's possible. What's possible, and empowering them to understand the possibilities that they can cause to accelerate them towards the goal. So that's how the two work beautifully together. Some of the other tools I sometimes lean on, because some people do have difficulty identifying their goals that they want to own versus just their corporate goals, is then maybe even dig a little deeper under strengths in terms of their values and their beliefs and tying that back to their strengths, which sometimes can work very well indeed.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that. Maybe you've got an example of, kind of that light bulb coming on for somebody, but I know values is really important, and I know sometimes if we stop at strengths and just try to jump to work but don't incorporate personal values, we're missing a huge component of who that person is and what makes them tick. So talk a little bit more about the values piece.
Yeah, so there's different tools that we use in terms of values, and I don't use it consistently. I use strengths approach consistently. That's how we built the organization. The values and beliefs piece I tend to bring in when people seem to have a roadblock, and it can be one of two things. Sometimes that roadblock is a strength overdone. In fact, what I find is a lot of leaders that are struggling with something is where they're overusing a strength, but sometimes it's what they're trying to do is not in sync with their values and beliefs. And so these simple tools to help them come back to their authentic self using strengths and a value beliefs tool helps them really step back and understand who they are, and being able to step back clearly helps us then accelerate forward faster.
Yeah, no, that's great. And share a specific example, Jayne. I know you've got a lot over the years, again, both from your time in corporate, but also just with the business that you've started. Share an example of a story of coaching an individual, a leader, where it just reminded you, like, this was so worth it. This is why I do what I do.
That gives me goosebumps when I even think of that, because I really, you know me, I really do believe this is what I should be doing.
Yep.
So the one example I'll share, I could choose amongst multiple, is a very senior executive in a large Fortune 500 company, very successful over time. And he's so successful, he's often brought in like as a troubleshooter. Okay. And he was asked to put together a team for a 2-year project to launch a product that was so critical for the business. There was a lot of responsibility on his head, a lot of pressure time-wise. He pulled together the most talented team. When we got talking, he was struggling with getting the team to deliver as fast and with their accuracy that he needed, that pace. So he was very much a learner, a good coach as a leader, very strategic. So when we started talking about the strengths approach, his initial reaction was, well, I've done Myers-Briggs and it's at the bottom of my drawer. And so he had some skepticism. So we carried on talking for a few months and helped him realize that strengths really, there's an awareness piece, but then it's turning it into action, aiming it to really have results. And so what he learned from it over the period of coaching was the people that he was trying to move forward faster and coach on his team were just so the opposite spectrum to what he was. They had the total opposite strengths. So naturally he was using his strengths to move them forward, and it was somewhat clashing with the way they were wired. And so when he was able to understand these individuals at a deeper level, he had so much respect for them and their talent and what they could do. they were able to more effectively work together, and it accelerated rapidly in a short time.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. And again, I think that component, like you said, of pulling it all together, how does it weave into what's next? Talk a little bit about, again, I think one of the ahas out there for people listening is that you are somebody who's not just saying, I think I'm going to start my own coaching business or consulting, but you did, and it's worked, right? And I know from our conversations, you had many conversations with your husband going, you want to do what? But you've got a good job, Why do we need to, But it's working. Talk a little bit about just that development of what you did when you kind of decided, all right, this is now going to be my full-time thing, is coaching, consulting. What is it that you did to kind of develop yourself? Because again, I know there's a lot of people out there who have even been preparing themselves. They've been maybe dabbling with coaching on the side. They bought a Gallup coaching kit that they trip over, and go, oh, I need to spend more time with that. Which I know you said that at one point you were like, all right, I got to spend more time with this kit. But talk about development for the coaches out there. What is it that you did, or what is it that you'd recommend for them in their own development of thinking about growing their business as a coach?
So I think there are two pieces to that. There's the business piece, developing your business, and there's then developing you as a coach. So I decided to develop a business that was more than me, to have almost 30 coaches around the US and the UK that we bring in to do Churchill work. So my recommendation to anyone is decide what business model you want for your coaching business. Is it about you, or is it something different? And really, really think about that, because either way it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of resilience, particularly if you're moving from more of a corporate world to starting your own business. So my recommendation is really think about the business model that you want and what that means you would be doing every day. Lean on your strengths, because that really will help you accelerate and understand your why behind your decision. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and he talks about why companies do what they do. If you have a really strong why and you believe in what you're doing, both your strengths and that belief behind it will help you get through those tough times. So understand what type of business model and have a clear belief in why you're doing what you're doing, because it doesn't happen overnight and there will be bumps in the road. When it comes to coaching and helping yourself be a more effective coach, I did a different strengths certification, certified coach and facilitator. I did executive coaching certification, ICF, I'm just finishing right now. And then the idea of a few friends that had done the Gallup coaching. And my initial reaction was like, I'm not sure I need this. It's a week out of work, etc., and the investment. But my maximizer kicked in, and when I really leaned on my strategic strengths to think about how this would help the business as well as me continue to grow, it seemed to make a lot of sense. And I have to tell you, Jeremy, you and I have spoken about this. It was a phenomenal week. My connectedness strength kicked in terms of the relationships I was able to build, and definitely I can see where this extra certification and the tools can help our future. Now, post that, coming home, the story I told you was we come away with a ton of materials, amazing materials for us to coach as well as to run team facilitated workshops. My arranger in me is struggling with the maximizer, because I want to maximize every bit of it, but I haven't. I'm only halfway through arranging all the pieces to know how I can use them in the business to the best of our ability. So I'm still going through that, and I put the boxes in the middle of one of our offices so that it's constantly on my radar every day to chip away at it. But already we're using it, so that's really good news.
Hey, Jeremy, can I jump in real fast?
Yeah.
There was
a
book mentioned. Can you repeat that, the reference to that?
The Simon Sinek?
Yes.
Yeah, he's an author. I forget the exact name of his book, but it's about his why. But if you Google him,
start with why.
It's something with why. That may be it.
Mm-hmm.
I watch a lot of his TED videos. You can get the concept from there without reading the book, but it's powerful. My recommendation is know your own personal why.
Very good. Keep going, Jeremy.
Right. No, that's great. I'd love for you to hit on too, Jayne, because you're so strong with the business development side, and I know you and I talked about that's one of the things as I'm talking to coaches, many of them are passionate about coaching, but they need clients, right? They need people that want to be coached.
Yeah.
And some of them are obviously doing it just volunteer on the side for fun, part of what they do, but there's many who realize that this can become a career for them. It's not just coaching family, friends, and people you encounter, but there are real needs that leaders, executive managers at any level in the organization have. Even individual people just trying to discover, am I in the right job, or what does this look like? Talk about from your lens of kind of business development. How does that work? And again, part of it might be unique to you and your strengths, but when you said, all right, I'm starting a business, how do you begin to get a client that's excited about coaching, and more importantly, getting their organization to buy into strengths if they're going to roll out Strength Finder to their team or broader? What does it look like? How do we help the coaches on the call to think about that?
That's a huge question. And so my background of working across all different parts of a major business really helped me conceptually think through what that looked like at a small business level, so I was at that advantage. I really, really do rely on my strengths in everything I do in the business, so that's my biggest recommendation, because we're all uniquely different and everything has to accelerate us forward, and that's your best path. So make sure that everything you're trying to do in your business, you're constantly looking and leaning on that lens of your 5 strengths. I think from a business development perspective, marketing is so key. Business development is purely sales, but you need to be able to articulate concisely, passionately, and clearly what the value of what you do is, and do it in terms of results. So having your marketing message and brainstorming, even bring in some business friends. That's often what we do a couple of times a year to re-enhance our marketing messages, and brainstorm and make sure that you have a mission and vision and strategic goals, and then the tactical stuff in terms of what you have to do. Another big recommendation is focus. Focus for me is about number 8. And so my focus and my discipline help manage my maximizer. My maximizer is more, I call it squirrel syndrome. Everything around me, I see opportunity. Well, that just pulls me in lots of directions. So that can put so much pressure on myself. So focus. You cannot be all to everyone. Focus on what market you want, what size of company, what type of client, and then it will come. If you're good at what you do, the referral piece of success is huge. And I didn't even know that until I was into it. Referrals happen if you're good. Just stay focused.
Yeah, great. And I love the advice there too. And just to reiterate this, and you can add more to it, but that whole idea of for you figured out who am I, right? So that maximizer you're talking about, even Ranger, that's different, your signature themes of going, here's how Jayne is wired. And then your passion or what you're drawn toward are those senior leaders, bigger organizations. What does that look like from an impact standpoint? And I know there's people out there, I think even in the course you went through in DC, there's individuals who go, I lead with restorative. I want to find people who have problems, and I don't care who they are, and actually if they're too far up in the organization, it seems helpless. And so I think just that nugget, that takeaway, that for coaches out there to hear, that self-examination, even based on your strengths, who are you, how are you wired, and then what's your niche market? Because I think, like you said, when you dive into that, those individuals will refer others similar to themselves of, hey, I had a similar instance, and I spoke with Jayne, and you ought to give her a call, and here's what and why. Talk a little bit more, or go ahead.
That's how it happens. I would never, I found that hard to believe in the early days, but once business started to come in, that's where most of our business comes from.
Yeah, and I think that piece that we just hit on really does help people focus in on who am I, what is it that I offer. Expand a little bit more on the marketing side. So if as I identify for myself, here are my top 5, here's who I want to coach. How do I market that? I know you do a really good job with your clients, and I know you even had a recent blog post on your site about kind of that personal brand. So it's like what you're marketing is your brand or a brand promise, right? So if you work with me, here's what I do for you. Talk a little bit more about that, whether it's the advice you give to your clients, or again, advice to these coaches on how they can solidify their brand, but then share that brand, market that brand.
That's a really good question. So first of all, remember I said earlier about decide what your business model is. So while I will brand myself for the clients that I'm working with, Churchill Leadership Group is not about Jayne. It's about the Churchill Leadership Group. So a lot of what we brand is about the company. So if you're deciding to have a business model where you're the coach and that's your business, then it becomes the brand more about you.
Yeah.
So I think there's that distinction. We have to do a little of both, but the bigger is Churchill. So once you do that, I think a lot of what I talk about with clients is about helping them be the best of their authentic self, and that's where strengths comes in beautifully. And beyond that, we will coach and teach them leadership skills and help them work through challenges and accelerate their performance. So when it comes to branding yourself, don't rush that. That's the first piece of advice. Use your strengths and use other resources to help you understand who are you as a coach, and what does that mean, and how does that sound. Get feedback from other people. I really think what I've learned in a vacuum, coming from a big organization, we had huge teams to work on product strategy, and we had vendors to work on product strategy and to brainstorm. Don't be an N of one. Don't rely on just your spouse and your family. Get some people that you trust and respect and maybe have already been through this to help you brainstorm your brand. In fact, this is an exercise we're doing with a group of women on the West Coast next week, is helping them brand themselves. So there's a lot out there on the internet about personal branding. So the best thing is Google, get a couple of books or, audible.com and learn more about personal branding, but take the time to do it and don't try and be something you're not. Understand who the authentic you is, and the strengths is a perfect place to start with that.
That's great. Jim, do we have questions coming in?
Yeah, we absolutely do. So, and I'll remind you, if you're listening to this, we are recording this. So if you just came in midway and you're like, I missed it, we do record it, coaching.gallup.com. It'll be available right after the show is over. You can sit down and listen to it that way. And if you had some audio-video problems, we've been pretty popular today. So if you had some audio-video problems, that replay will be available for you as well. But Mike G. asked from Chicago, how does the idea of intrinsic motivation tie to how an individual's strengths are used, or are those two completely independent of one another?
No, I don't think they're completely independent. I think whenever we're coaching an individual, when I'm coaching an individual, what helps us, starting with strengths, is help us understand them at a deeper level, as well as them understanding themselves at a deeper level. And part of the coaching questioning I will do will help dig deeper into what has motivated them in the past. Not just what motivates them at work, what are the carrots at work, but what are those intrinsic motivators that drive them. And sometimes you can see clear lines of connection between the two. Like for me, futuristic, I'm very focused on the future. I live with my husband who's very focused on the past. Some of our conversations are rather amusing because neither of us are focused on today. but my motivation is all about what the future looks like. I'm driven that way, and it actually shows up in my strengths. So I think they definitely are connections if you ask the right questions.
Very cool. And then Mo asked, and I think this is a great question we should ask every coach, which is, how have you made StrengthsFinder coaching last and stay fresh? How do you keep that fresh, day over day?
For myself or for clients?
Both.
Okay. So for clients, I'm always looking to create tools, and thank you to Gallup. They provided tools through the program I recently went through, of how I can keep going back to my client teams and keep strengths right on their radar. An example might be kickoff programs in the new year where they have strategic goals, but now they want to put some energy and alignment and action around them. That would be a great facilitated workshop that I would run with a client, where we lean on their strengths to really get the best out of the team, and collaboration in the right places where strengths complement each other. For me as a strengths coach, I think doing different certifications and staying very connected to fellow coaches really keeps my sword sharp. It keeps me on the ball. I do this every day and talk about it every day. I think this is my purpose. Again, this is my why. I so believe in what I do. I don't have any problem keeping it fresh, but I think it's Jim Rohn. I read an article on Southwest Airlines the other week, and it says, surround yourself. You are a product of the 5 people you spend most of the time with. Plus, in addition to that, the quality time you spend on your own. So think about it. If you want to be an amazing strength coach, my recommendation is spend time with amazing strength coaches to keep you in that sort of maximum space. Does that help?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great answer. No right answers there, right? It's just what you do. Sundog asks at a chat as well, coaching, consulting, mentoring are all buzzwords that are becoming more and more popular. Please discuss what you consider to be the difference between these terms. Coaching, consulting, mentoring.
So we do some consulting. An example is a client that I kicked off this week. It's more around talent management. So that organization is a medium-sized organization, and they don't have many processes in place yet in terms of identifying current skill or skill of the role or leadership capabilities across the organization. So that's where I would come in as a consultant. Then when it comes to helping the CEO become more effective as CEO is where the coaching would kick in. And then we coach his team in a strength-based approach. So that's where consulting and coaching overlap. The consulting is more around giving advice and doing some of the work for them, at times bringing in your expertise. Coaching is different in that really you're not telling a client what to do, you're helping the client realize where they're trying to get to and helping them realize the best path and how to get there based on their authentic best, building confidence and helping them get there, but you're not giving them all the answers. With a consultant, you're giving more of the answers. Does that make sense? Mentoring, I actually have a blog article on our site, the difference between coaching and mentoring, and it's about 4 pages long, so you're welcome to go look at that. One of the things I've experienced with mentoring is I would go to a mentor because they're an expert at one particular thing. One of the things that we did in the business was scale the systems in the business so we could be more operationally effective. And I went to a couple of people that have done that in their business and have been through that experience, and I went to them as a mentor for that specific purpose. For a 6-month period, we would meet monthly. So that I would see as a mentor. A coach is sort of more hands-on, it's more specific, it's more measurable over time, and it can be on a broad array of subjects.
Very good. There's actually a chat going on, or a sub-chat going on around higher ed, and I just want to let you guys know we are working on some higher ed stuff just like this for the podcast. So hang tight out there and follow Call to Coach, and we may have some stuff coming up for you as well. Stacy in Minneapolis asked this, Jayne, how do you learn how to implement the use of StrengthsFinder in your company? I'm assuming meaning maybe in some companies, or your suggestion on how you do that in a company for somebody who's working on the inside. What knowledge/resources are necessary to be a coach for your company?
So I'm not in a company anymore. I'm not in a corporation. But when I was in the corporation, I would rely on anything I could get my hands off. Back then, that was a long time ago. Now, Gallup, there are tons of opportunities, resources that you can take. You can become a certified coach, which I'd highly recommend, as well as the team and team coaching that you can do. So Gallup have a whole tremendous amount of resources. Like I said, I'm tripping over them. I have so many. So certainly come back to Gallup and see what they have. And obviously it's built with experts and over decades. Within the company, how we keep it going is we work with strength coaches, certified strength coaches, and we work with multiple of them, not just here but in Europe, so that we can keep strengths alive. That's usually where we start. We all have tons of corporate experience. We've been successful in the corporate world as leaders, and we focus on strengths first, and that's our philosophy as a company. That's how we're different to other companies. Then we go from there. So we rely on each other for other ideas to inspire clients around why strengths, how to turn strengths into action, and how to keep strengths alive to build a strength-based culture within their organizations. It's not easy. It's not what I describe. It's not a flip of a switch that happens overnight. But it's a journey, and it's a journey that's well worth taking.
Jayne, we got the opportunity, and I got the opportunity to interview you right as you were on the way out of or graduating from our Accelerated Strengths program, and that's all available on our YouTube page. Just head out to YouTube and search Gallup Strengths Center if folks want to see that interview. But it's been a while now. It's been a couple of weeks since that. What was your favorite? And this is I'm kind of rolling a question, or we'll say Jim in Omaha asked this question. What was your favorite resource coming out of that, or what are you leaning on the most now that you've been out of the accelerated program?
For executives, looking at the full 34. And I'll be honest, I think I've told Jeremy this, that 12 years ago, 34 wasn't available back then, but even 5 with a big team seemed a lot, because you could end up with 25 different strengths on your team you'd have to know about and remember and all of this. So it felt even a little overwhelming over there, but you get better at this over time. And I would never have thought looking at the whole 34 was manageable. But trust me, with executives that are already very good at what they do, the 34 can work wonders. And I'll add a piece to that coaching is no longer about fixing someone when they're broken. So many companies now are bringing coaches in for their top performers, for their top talent, to accelerate them. Companies are understanding, not all of them, but they're starting to understand the importance of coaching for greater performance and not just fixing. And again, that's why a strengths approach to coaching is so valuable, because that's an individual's accelerator, their greatest path to higher performance.
Yeah, and Don in Canada asked this. It's a big country, so Don, maybe you could give us the city you're in. But Don asked this: are there certain strengths that are critical to being a good coach, and strengths? Oh, it just moved up. And strengths that make coaching more significantly difficult?
I don't think so. I always, when I'm talking about strengths with clients, is because you get something called strength envy. When they see their strengths, there's another one they wanted to be there, or maybe there's one in their top 5 that they didn't want to be there. And I think part of the strength journey is helping them understand there are no good or bad strengths. They're all good, and that we're all unique individuals. And I think this is a term I picked up from Gallup, is our strengths don't define us, we define what we do with them. And all of the 34 strengths can be used incredibly to accelerate performance, personal growth, as well as personal satisfaction. So
yeah, that's well
no.
said. Mm-hmm.
Okay, one more question. We're going to kind of bring this in for a landing here as we talk about this. We'll stay around. Lots of great questions coming out of chat. So, Jayne, hang tight with us. We'll do a little post-show, and we'll ask some more questions from you. But Mo asked again, what's your favorite question to ask in session 1? Do you kind of have a template that you use when you're joining somebody for the first time, and is there a favorite question?
I do have a template, and it has a lot of questions on there, and I try and really tailor it to the client, so I do as much background research as I can on the client. And what I've learned to do is, before we have a sort of session 1 coaching session, I tend to do a 30-minute discovery session. I can send questions and they can answer it via email, but I like to really understand the individual for 30 minutes before we kick off the coaching, and that helps me understand them. I do it by Skype or live wherever possible, because 53% of how we communicate is in our body language, and a lot of that's missed if we just do phone coaching. So it's not about a particular question, but it's about very good active listening about what the client's saying, so then when we get to coaching, I can choose the right questions. Was that clear?
Yeah. No, it's very good. Very good. Jeremy, you have anything else for Jayne during the show here?
No, I just think those last 2 comments, Jayne, that you articulated perfectly on that whole idea of all 34 signature themes are meant to be positive, and that combination of them, it's not one is better than the other. Again, we talk about that in strength-based leadership when people wanted to know what are the best top 5 of a CEO. People ask the same thing. What are the best top 5 for a coach? And it's back to your strengths defining how you do things, how you coach, and then it may define a little bit too of who you coach. If you've got more strategic thinking themes and you want to come alongside people with big strategy versus more executing themes, and you always want to help people kind of roll up your sleeves and do it with them. I mean, there's different components, I think, of who you are and who you'll help, but I love the way you just validated that, and we teach that a lot, obviously, of these barrier labels that people attach to. Ooh, you have that one. Sorry, sorry, and you're like, no, they're all positive and can all be used constructively. So thanks for sharing that best practice, and even that idea of coaching is less about a script, but it is about the individual. So are there great questions that you ask every time? Sure, but where the conversation goes, that individual is not the same as the individual you just coached yesterday. So you all need to be aware of that. Yeah.
And one of the things that I came away from the Gallup coaching course with was a ton more great questions. You can tell that you've collected them over time, and that's another one of the many.
70 years of asking questions lets us, us sort through. Yeah.
All right. Well, good enough. Well, if you're listening to the live version, don't go anywhere. One of the advantages of staying around for live is we do a little bit of post-show. We're going to ask Jayne some more questions. Keep her around as long as we can until we have to let her go. But stay around for the post-show. But Jeremy and I need to kind of wrap this up so we can package it up. It is available recorded. You can share this with your friends as well. Get this information out, and so it will be available for you, both audio and video out there. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available out of the Gallup Strength Center. That's just GallupStrengthCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments, or even if you'd like to be a guest blogger. We've had 7 or 8 of those over the last couple months. Sign up to do that. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, if you'd like to do that. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of the show and all the past ones as well over on, and we've got links to our Facebook and YouTube page now over there, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to join our Facebook group. We got about 35 of you do that during the show, and that is great. Be sure to subscribe to Call to Coach on our YouTube channel. That's just youtube.com, and just search for Gallup Strength Center there, and you can do that as well. We want to thank Jayne for being with us today and for joining us, and we look forward to the next Call to Coach. Jeremy, what do we have coming up next?
Yeah, our next call, Jim, will be December 20th, 1 p.m. Eastern, and we will have Jackie Merritt, who's actually been with Gallup over 24 years. She's a senior practice consultant coach with Gallup, does a lot of her time with executives in their teams. She's worked over the years with CEOs, leaders, managers, really maximizing their own potential, but also that of their team. So excited to just, again, share some of our best practices of one of our internal coaches who has been around since Strengths was developed, and talk about the evolution of that and how she's been able to maximize that and really see it unleash potential in people and their organizations. So that'll be, again, December 20th, 1 p.m. Eastern.
All right, very good. Stay around for the post show. Your questions and comments live from chat. Goodbye, everyone.